In this section, we'll be discussing about how to troubleshoot your VLAN issues, especially in the switch networks. We have a VLAN configurations, and we are going to see how to troubleshoot and what are the things we need to keep in mind when we are verifying the VLAN configurations. So there are a few important things, like first we need to initially start with the physical connectivity and ensure that your physical connectivity must be up, and then we may need to also check something called port security, which we'll see, and then same networks, and then finally the devices must be on the same VLAN also. So let us come with the first one, physical connectivity. So if you remember, in our previous videos we discussed about these two commands which we used for testing, for verifying your interface status. So show interface status, which is very useful command in troubleshooting your networks. Like, this is a sample output which you might find when you give show interface status. Like here, if you see something called connected, which means the device have a proper connection here. So there are multiple types of status messages you may find. You may find first status message as not connected, which means there is a physical connectivity issue. There may be no single device connected on that particular port, or might be the keyboard problem, like we discussed already these possible issues in the previous video. Connected means it's connected properly. And apart from that, you may find something called disabled state. If you see disabled state, the port might be in shutdown state. Apart from that, you will also see one more status message. We call that as error disabled state. You might see error disabled state. If you see this state, you have to understand that that particular port, whichever is not able to communicate, that particular port is it is implemented with some port security, and it has violated the rules to enter into error disabled state. So port security we discussed in a separate video, if you remember. So just go through with that video to have a good understanding on port security. So I'm not getting into much in detail about the port security. So I'm just trying to show you the different possible status messages which you'll find when you use show interface status commands, and based on that status messages we can figure out the possible reason or possible problem which can affect your physical connectivity. So the next thing we need to check, show interface status, the first status message command. The next thing we need to verify the physical connectivity with show IP interface brief command. So you should expect whatever the interface connecting must be up and up. If you see something called interface status down, then the problem might be the physical connectivity. You need to check the physical connectivity again. So physical connectivity issues we have seen much more in detail in our previous videos. And after that, we can verify the MAC table also, like which device connected on which port. That is other thing we can check. So show IP interface brief up, down, you may see sometimes you'll see administratively down. So when you see administrative down, again it is another thing, is it's simply the port is in shutdown state. So if you see here in this message, you'll see something called disable, but if the port in shutdown state, when you give show IP interface brief, you'll see something called administratively down. So apart from that, we have port security. The port will be in error disabled state. And the next thing is, if these two users are not able to communicate with each other, so you have to make sure that the IP addressing whichever we are using, 192.168.1.1, if I'm using 192.168.1.4, they should be on the same network. Because in order to communicate within the LAN, both the devices must be on the same network. And in case if they are in different networks, in that case also no communication happens, which means the IP addressing and subnet mask configurations also one thing we need to verify in case if any specific devices are not able to communicate. So you might get into some if you're using DHCP in your network, probably the DHCP issues. So troubleshooting DHCP I'll discuss separately. So you have to make sure that the device is getting the IP address, or whatever the IP address present on both the devices is configured correctly as per the requirement. So if they are on different networks, then they will never communicate with each other. They should go via router, and that is something called inter-VLAN routing. So inter-VLAN routing again will be troubleshooting it separately. What are the things we need to keep in mind? So I'm not trying to mix up everything here. So there might be a DHCP issue, and if two different networks are not communicating, it might be an inter-VLAN issue. So but here we are just simply trying to figure out what could be the possible reason if two devices in my LAN which are on the same network are not communicating. And finally, you have to make sure that both the devices must be on the same VLAN. So these are some of the things we need to keep in mind, which we whenever we are doing some troubleshooting your VLAN. So to verify some basic troubleshooting, I have a simple scenario here where I have a switch which is connecting to 4 devices on port number 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the 4 ports which I'm connecting to my devices, and I think I'm using port number 20, which is connecting to my router F0x0 interface. So what I want to do is, here I have already inserted some pre-configurations which are something you need to troubleshoot. Okay, so we'll do some troubleshooting here, and my requirement is the PC here, which is 192.168.1.1, is trying to access a server which is on 192.168.1.4, and the communication between these two devices is not happening due to some of misconfigurations which I already did in my initial configs here. So I want to make sure that these two devices must be able to communicate with each other, and I just try to put some errors into it so that we can really verify the things, and you can even understand what is the step-by-step method I should approach for troubleshooting. So let's get started with this lab here. Let me write down what exactly we are supposed to do here. I want to ensure that the device on 192.168.1.1 must be able to communicate with 192.168.1.4. If I try to ping, I should get a reply message. So let's try to see and verify whether I'm able to ping or not. Okay, so I'm getting into my PC, which is my 192.168.1.1, the first PC, and I want to ensure that I should be able to ping to 192.168.1.4, which is not happening right now. So now the problem can be anywhere. So now the problem can be anywhere means, first we need to figure out, like, the problem might be on your PC IP address configurations, or the problem might be the connectivity between the PC and the switch, and the problem might be on the switch, or the problem might be on the server which you are trying to access, or the problem might be on your switch VLAN configurations. Everything we're just trying to figure out, what should I check, what are the things I need to keep in mind, and what is the step-by-step approach for troubleshooting in our scenario. So what I'll do is, anyway I'm not able to access 1.4 and I should fix it. What I'll do is, I will try to verify whether I'm able to access the other devices in my network or not. You can see I'm not able to access 1.2 as well, and I'm trying to access 1.3 as well, and I don't see any reply here, which means there is some problem on my local device. So on my local device there is some problem, might be the connectivity part. So if I see my diagram, the connectivity, the cable which I used, it's a straight cable. So cabling part, you need to check each and everything, whatever I discussed in my previous video. So it might be a cable issue, it can be a port issue. You can see some red symbol here, but let us go to our switch. So might be the problem is not on my PC here. On the PC part, the first thing, my IP address configuration is correct, 192.168.1.1, and I will try to check my fourth device. So it's not a problem with the device, it's a problem with my device connecting to switch. So there is a connectivity issue between my PC and the switch. So what we can do is, we can directly jump to our switch to verify on my switch. So command, either you can use show interface status, which I'm not using here. This command is not supported in your packet tracer program, so I'm using show IP interface brief command here. So I'm going to use show IP interface brief, and in that I need to check my port which is connecting to my device here. And as I said, you should have a very good understanding on which port going which side. So sometimes what happens, we try to figure out, we connect on this port, maybe I'm using port number 10, and we assume that we are connecting port number 1. So you should have a very proper documentation of your diagram, which is going to give information about the right ports, and that should be exactly the same. So whenever you make any changes, you just make sure that you also update your documentation so that you really don't find any problem in troubleshooting. Okay, so or you can use show, or it's very important you to have, or you can verify the physical connectivity between these two, which is again a lengthy process to confirm whether the appropriate cable is F0 by 1 or not. So in my case, I'm connecting F0 by 1, and right now you can see the first issue. You can see it is administratively down, which means my port number 1 is in shutdown state. So generally what happens is, in the real production networks, we generally shut down the ports which we don't use. We simply shut down them in the production networks. So sometimes what happens when you are doing that, you may by mistake or unknowingly, you also try to shut down your used ports which I'm using. So maybe it might be the reason. So I'll just quickly fix this one by giving a command called no shutdown, finish. So I realized there was one problem and I tried to fix. Fine. So my interface is up. Now what I'll do is I'll try to verify. So whenever you fix the issue, I really recommend you to go back to your PC and just try to communicate with other devices, just to ensure that maybe that might be your problem and you almost fix it. So you don't really need to go to each and everything and verify if you are able to ping, which means there are no more troubleshootings you need to do. Okay, you can save your time. You can see I'm not able to ping to 1.4 still, so which means there are some more issues present in my scenario here. So next thing, let us verify trying to ping to other devices in my network. Now you can see I'm able to ping to 1.2 and I'm able to ping to 1.3 as well, and I'll try to ping to my router which is in my LAN. I should be able to ping, even I'm not able to ping to router also, which means there are some more issues we need to keep in mind. Fine. So let us quickly summarize what we did. We try to verify. So this device is able to ping to the other devices in my LAN, which means there is no problem with connectivity with the switch. So this part is perfect. So which means the problem is on the switch configuration. So we need to verify your switch configuration. Okay. So next thing we need to check is, we have seen the physical connectivity issue. Port security, anyway we did not use any port security. I don't see any error disabled state as of now. Now the third thing, I verified that they are on the same network. IP address and subnet mask, I think they are correct. So the next thing, last thing we need to check is the devices must be on the same VLAN. Devices must be on the same VLAN, which means I'm using port number 1, 2, 3, 4, port number 1, port number 2, 3, 4, port number 1, 2, 3, 4, as well as port number 20. They should be on the same VLAN in order to have communication. If you misconfigure the VLANs also, you will not be able to communicate, because the VLAN traffic is that the devices will only communicate if they are part of a same broadcast domain. So as per our requirement, port number 1, 2, 3, 4 and port number 20 must be on the same VLAN. So let us verify that. So it seems a VLAN configuration issue. So I'll go to my switch and I will give a command called show VLAN. So I'll try to verify. You can see port number 1, 2, 3, or they are on the VLAN 10, and port number 20 on port number 4 is on VLAN 20. So which means, so this is what I should expect, what I should see. So the first thing, if you want to communicate, you should know what should be the correct configurations. So the basic part of the troubleshooting is knowing the correct configurations is the basic part. If you don't know what are the exact correct configurations, in that case it becomes really difficult for you to figure out what commands are affecting your what exactly the things affecting your communication. So in my case, port number 1, 2, 3 they are on the VLAN 10, and port number 4 that is on VLAN 20, and port number 20 it is on VLAN 1, which is default. So that is not the case, right? Because we want all these devices must be on the same VLAN, then only they can communicate. So what I need to do is I need to shift this port number 4 into VLAN 10, and port number 20 also I need to shift to VLAN 10, so that all the devices in the LAN must be able to communicate with each other. So let's go to switch, and I'm going into my interface range command so that I can shift at one time and interface port number 20, switch port mode access, and switch port access VLAN 10. So now if I verify show VLAN 10, I hope so. This command is not supported here. You can see all the 5 ports which I am connecting are on the same VLAN. So Now definitely I should see the communication should happen between all my devices. So I'll go to my 1.1 PC. So last time I was able to ping to 1.2, so this time also I was able to ping, and I was also able to ping to 1.3 as well, and I should be able to ping to 1.4 as well. Now you can see I'm able to ping, and even I should be able to ping to 1.100 also. Okay, so the correct VLAN configurations are very important if you want your devices to communicate with each other. So especially in the production networks, you have a lot of VLAN configurations, and really you have more VLAN configurations, the more confusion it will create. So you just need to try to understand your requirement, your topology, and you have to make sure that what are the correct configurations which are required to make your communication process happens. Okay, suppose if you have one more switch, anyway we'll see that switching part in the next part. So these are the things we need to really keep in mind when we are troubleshooting. The first thing, basic part, is always physical connectivity. We should always start with the physical connectivity. That is mandatory. Okay, and physical connectivity we discuss more in detail, like duplex mismatch might be the reason. We have seen much more in detail in our previous video. And in case if you are using port security, ensure that the port is not in error disabled state. And finally, you have to make sure that the IP addresses are correctly configured and the subnet mask is also correctly configured, and they are on the appropriate proper VLAN so that they can communicate with each other.